Hello, everybody. I guess everybody's joining us. Okay, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at International Federation of Catholic Universities. Some of you know me. My name is Corinne Milou, and I head the Foresight Unit at FIUC-IFCU. And today I'm going to talk about universities and soft skills. Why soft skills? Because it's been a leading topic in the higher education sector for a number of years already. And so what I'm going to do is first to give you an overview of how the significance of soft skills has increased in the labor market over the past decade. So I'm going to concentrate first on labor work. And then I'll show what challenges I think this poses for universities and colleges today. And then finally, in a third part, I will raise the question of whether institutions of higher learning are indeed the best equipped to become providers of soft skills, which, as I will argue, represents quite a challenge, is bound to represent quite a challenge for our sector. So let's start with the workplace, soft skills and the workplace. I have an outline somewhere. Loic, can I share my screen? Yeah. Let me go to my slides. Okay. Let me move this here. Okay, this is my outline. All right, which I've just spelled out. So I'll start with soft skills in the workplace. This is, of course, where the huge transformation first occurs, and then, which is the reason it's my first part, and then second part, universities have to react to that, okay? But that's where the change is taking place. And it is one of the most dramatic transformations that have been happening in the world of work for over a decade. And I'm, of course, talking about the increasing penetration of technology, of artificial intelligence in a growing array of occupational sector, and penetration that has affected an ever wider range of tasks and jobs. More and more, what we see is categories of workers who, even for a long time, believed that their job was immune to the advance of technology, that are faced with the arrival of new technology, of software, of AI, that can perform for them tasks previously viewed as beyond the ability of machines to carry out, and in a growing number of cases, machines and algorithms that can simply replace people altogether. One of the already clear effects of the impact of ongoing technological advances in the workplace has been that the traditional career path that we know, whereby people learn a certain trade, study a particular field, and then go on to work their way up over the span of virtually a lifetime, all through their active life in the same area of occupation, all of this is rapidly becoming obsolete. Now, providing this kind of specialized knowledge in a given field of occupation, whether it's law, medicine, science, management, etc., has been, of course, by and large, what universities do, what they have traditionally done. One of the ways in which employers and other stakeholders in the world of work have responded to this challenge has been by putting the emphasis on the need for these so-called soft skills. First of all, what are soft skills? Let me provide a simple definition. There are a few, but I think this is the most broad and wide-ranging, non-technical skills that mainly relate to how people work and interact with others in a work setting. This following slide has a little chart. Let me move this around so you can see examples of soft skills. I don't know if you can read the skills, because the name of the skills, because they're actually printed very small. There's empathy, communication, creativity, time management, negotiations, motivation, personality development, coaching, and mentoring. That's what we have on the chart. To summarize, soft skills are non-technical skills. They are opposed to cognitive or hard skills that are connected to a specific trade and are learned through formal education or through training or through practice. Now, why the emphasis on soft skills? As a response to the increasing penetration of technology in the workplace? Because as lifelong careers become obsolete, as I've just said, and people change jobs and even fields of occupation at an increasingly fast pace, alongside the development of technology, these skills are viewed as transferable, quintessentially transferable, which is now the key word, transferable skills, the key word in higher education and training. So the idea is, of course, that as people move from one job to another, they will be able to take those skills with them and carry them over to the next job or to the next occupation, even if they change fields completely. Now, this trend, which had already been rapidly developing over the past decades through multiple occupational sectors, has been undoubtedly reinforced by the COVID-19 pandemic. No doubt about that. I'll mention here just a survey of one survey of millions of job ads performed by LinkedIn in 2020 that shows that the top five skills that employers will seek out in the coming years and are already seeking out. In other words, the skills that are the most in demand are soft skills. And these skills are, you can see communication, problem solving, analytical skills or critical skills, sometimes called one or the other, customer service, leadership. That's what comes out of the LinkedIn study of 2 years ago. And this was directly a result of the pandemic. There were similar surveys that were carried out in previous years that did not show the same results. And these findings that you see here are similar to results found in multiple other studies. We can also see that these skills are very prominent through the literature of major relevant organizations and institutions, such as the World Economic Forum, OECD, UNESCO, the European Commission, et cetera, et cetera. Following the pandemic, more soft skills have been added, whose need is clearly an outcome of the impact of the pandemic. For example, active learning, resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility. In another study done by McKinsey last year, we see that in the wake of the pandemic, 69%, look at that. Oh, that's not the right order. 67%, sorry. No, actually, this is not, you know what? I may not have a slide for this one. I don't have a slide for this one. So the slides are in the right order. I just don't have a slide for this one. Sorry about that. It's a McKinsey study that came out last year, and it shows that in the wake of the pandemic, 69% of companies that were surveyed in the study reported that they were doing more skill building than before the pandemic, which goes to show to what extent this trend was indeed reinforced by the advent of the pandemic. And the respondents to this study said that they were focusing in particular on social and emotional skills once again, skills like interpersonal skills, empathy, and alongside the more traditional ones like leadership, critical thinking, decision making, project management skills, etc. Okay, so this is a broad overview of what's going on regarding soft skills in the world of work, in the labor market, in the workplace. I'm now moving to my second part to explore the challenge that this poses for universities and colleges. First of all, most, if not all, of these skills, it's important to note, can be acquired and practiced either for free or at a very low cost in online courses. Online courses that can be taken independently from any university and any study program, to the extent that organization like the World Economic Forum, Davos, says, skills not degrees, I have the quote here, skills not degrees will shape the future of work. You see where I'm going with this, I assume. Of course, it represents a threat for universities in addition to, or rather in the context of the broader movement of what is called the unbundling of higher education and the constantly growing offer of short online courses, both non-credit and for credit, the latter that learners can actually stack. These are courses, of course, that can be taken anytime, whenever the learner feels like it. And in many cases, when they are for credit, they can be stacked so that all of this learning eventually amounts to a degree. All of it online, quite possibly without being associated with one particular university. What is true is that it's the case in particular in the US, but also in Europe. Universities, especially large and renowned ones, are present on this market. But it is a rapidly expanding market, some say exponentially expanding, that also attracts a growing number of non-institutional players, which are corporate actors, commercial companies that compete directly with universities and colleges. As things stand today, there seems to be a broad, this is my second point, there seems to be a broad disconnect through the developed world between what is taught at universities and what employers seek or even require in new recruits. In 2018, take a look at that, a national survey of American employers shows that to 67% of the respondents, employers, recent college graduates didn't have adequate leadership skills, and 60% of these employers thought that recent graduates didn't have sufficient oral and written communication skills. This is just to give you an example. Recent graduates, of course, completed the full cycle of education. We're not even talking about dropouts. We're talking about people who graduated. These are alarming figures. It's an example of the disconnect that I was talking about between the education that students receive at colleges and universities and what employers expect of them after they recruit them. So you can imagine the frustration that this creates on both sides, among employers, obviously, but also among young people who just invested years and sometimes huge amounts of money in a university education to find themselves looked upon as inadequate, basically, by their first employers. All of this is coming in a context where the value of university education as a whole, or rather the perception of that value among the wider public and increasingly among college-age people themselves, has significantly diminished over the past decade. Let's say roughly from the economic and financial crisis of 2008. With, on the other hand, a growing array of faster and cheaper alternatives to universities for post-secondary education and training, especially in the unbundled sector, because it offers solutions that are more in sync with the growing imperative of skilling, upskilling, and reskilling that is key to the growing need for lifelong learning. Okay, lifelong learning being the established response now to technological advances and their impact on work. Now, this leads me to my third and last part, and that's the focus on universities. I'll go back to my outline slide, universities as providers of soft skills. What does this all mean for universities? As I'm sure you can see, what is dawning for many universities and colleges with these major challenges is nothing less than really a fundamental reassessment of their role in the society at large. Universities that have traditionally viewed themselves as institutions dedicated to the pursuit and transmission of knowledge, to research, to the love of knowledge for its own sake, albeit with the idea, of course, to also prepare young people for professional life, all in a formal time frame of 3 or 4 years, depending on systems, for a study program that eventually leads to graduation. All of this, okay, universities that have traditionally defined themselves in this way may have, to a significant extent, to rethink their model in the coming years. One of the problems that this prospect poses is that teaching soft skills as a self-contained subject it's still a new thing. It's still a vastly untried endeavor. If we step back a little bit, we'll see that long before the term itself appeared, universities did already impart, in the broader context of liberal higher education, what is today branded as soft skills. At least some of them, perhaps the most crucial among them, such as critical skills, creative thinking, problem solving, communication. These skills were indeed part and parcel of a liberal education, but they were cultivated by students as the students specialized in a particular academic discipline. Rather than taught as freestanding subjects, as they are now, these skills were passed on as the sort of cumulative benefits of pursuing an education anchored in a body of knowledge, in a solid body of knowledge. You know, starting from general education and with the aim, at least for some students, of reaching a level of expertise in a specific field over time. What we see now across the professional literature is one emergent trend. Sorry, I have to mute myself, forgot to do that. It's an emergent trend in recent years. This one is more recent than the trends I've been talking about until now. It's really emerging. That points out that we are moving toward a so-called post-knowledge society. What it means is we're moving toward a society where knowledge, in terms of specific, specialized contents, becomes rapidly obsolete on the one hand, and is increasingly available from other sources than universities on the internet, essentially, on the other. So the idea here is that what should become critical instead of the acquisition of knowledge that is soon to become obsolete is individual competencies. To be able to learn and relearn, to be creative and innovative, to be able to solve problems, all of which relies on the acquisition of soft skills. And for the reasons I just mentioned, the question of whether universities are best equipped to pass on these skills, especially as standalone units and not alongside the traditional education, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that remains highly debatable. By and large, this is true today, at least. Governments that are getting involved in promoting soft skills programs, and it's more and more the case across the developed world and beyond, still vastly rely on universities to run these programs. So of course, none of what I'm saying means that, announces the complete demise of the university. But this is clearly a new game, and it's a game in which many universities can be outdone in the future. At a minimum, what it means is that universities will have to invest more resources in skills-oriented programs with an emphasis on soft skills. Whether this, for many institutions, can be done without shifting away from a classical academic offering has already been for years a leading concern among higher education stakeholders. To conclude, I'll say this: what I think is that most universities that have not yet fully entered this arena will ultimately have to follow one of three possible tracks, one of three possible paths. This is my last slide, and you can see it here. Either option number one, ignore the demand and run the risk of becoming irrelevant very clearly, except for a few exceptions, wealthy, very well-known, brand name universities. Two, maintain the traditional model while including a strong soft skill offer, however challenging, if that's possible at all, but that's obviously more complex. And three, a complete transformation, which is shifting the model to partnering with platforms that provide online training in soft skills. And so a complete conversion. Any combination of options 2 and 3 can add possible solutions, but option 1, choosing only option 1, I'm afraid it increasingly comes across, especially for smaller universities that don't have a lot of means, comes across as what I believe is a dangerous choice looking into the future. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, of course, I'll be happy to answer them.